The settlement bazaar was alive with noise and dust. Wooden stalls and rusty metal booths lined the narrow streets, filled with traders shouting about their goods. People moved in hurried steps, carrying baskets of grain, sacks of metal scraps, or parts of broken machines. The bazaar was the heart of the colony, but to Tomas, it was also a place of disappointment. He came often, hoping to find something useful, yet he rarely had enough coins to buy even the simplest items. Tomas was only 16, thin from hunger, his clothes patched more times than he could count. He worked odd jobs in the colony, carrying water, fixing fences, or sweeping the storage yards, but the pay was always small. That morning he had been paid 1 coin, just a single dollar, for moving heavy crates from the dock to the trading post. It was all he owned. As he wandered between the rows of traders, he wondered if he should save the coin for food. His stomach growled at the smell of fried roots coming from a nearby stall. He hesitated, thinking of how one warm meal could make him feel better. But his eyes kept moving, curious about what the bazaar offered today. At the far end of the street, where the crowds grew thinner and the voices rougher, Tomas noticed a group of men standing around a wooden platform. Something unusual was being displayed. The merchants were loud, laughing at their own jokes as they shouted to passers-by. Tomas drew closer, curious. On the platform stood a tall figure with a sack tied over her head. Her hands were bound with simple rope, and she did not move. She wore a long cloth dress that was torn at the edges, and she looked out of place among the piles of old tools and scrap machines around her. "Useless cargo," one of the merchants shouted. "She doesn't speak, doesn't work, doesn't fight. Who will take her off our hands?" The men laughed. Some people stopped to look, but most shook their heads and walked away. To them, she was strange, maybe even dangerous. The merchants grew more desperate. "Not worth a week's food," said another. "We'll let her go for 1 coin. "Yes, only 1 coin. "Someone, buy her, or she will rot in the sun." The crowd chuckled at the idea, and a few people muttered that even 1 coin was too much. But Tomas did not laugh. He felt his chest tighten as he looked at the figure on the platform. She was silent, but something about her made him pause. She did not hang her head in shame like others who had been sold in the bazaar before. She stood still, calm, almost proud, even though she was bound. The merchants noticed him staring. "Boy," one called out, grinning. "You have a coin? Why not take her? 1 coin, and she's yours. She'll keep you company while you sleep in your little shack." The men roared with laughter. Tomas felt heat rush to his face, but he did not move away. He looked at the coin in his hand, the only money he had. With it, he could buy bread or soup. But if he spent it here, he would have nothing left. Still, something inside him whispered that this was not an ordinary choice. The figure on the platform, covered in a sack, seemed to be waiting. It was as if she knew someone would see her differently. Tomas took a deep breath. His stomach was empty, his clothes thin, his life always weighed down by hunger and tiredness. Yet in that moment, he felt that the coin was meant for something greater. "I'll take her," he said, his voice steady. The merchants blinked, then burst into laughter again. "The poor boy spends his last coin," one shouted. But they handed him the rope and snatched the coin from his hand. The trade was done. The figure stepped down from the platform, silent as before. She walked beside Tomas, her head still covered by the sack. People in the crowd stared at him with disbelief. Some shook their heads, others smirked, but no one stopped him. Together they left the bazaar, moving past stalls filled with smoke and the cries of merchants. Tomas kept his head down, but his thoughts spun with questions. Who was she? Why had she been there? Why did he feel that this choice would change his life? By the time they reached the edge of the settlement, the noise of the bazaar was fading behind them. The desert stretched out ahead, golden under the setting sun. Tomas led her to his small shack, no more than a single room with a broken roof. He closed the door and finally turned to face her. His hands shook as he reached for the sack. He loosened the knot and pulled it away. What he saw made him freeze. The woman's face was not like any human he had ever known. Her skin carried faint glowing patterns, like rivers of light beneath the surface. Her eyes shone with a depth that felt endless, reflecting the light of the sun in ways no human eyes could. She looked at him calmly, and for the first time, she spoke. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice soft but filled with meaning. Tomas's heart raced. He realized, in that instant, that the single coin he had spent would change everything. Inside the small shack, silence hung heavy after the woman spoke. Her voice was gentle, like a song carried on the wind, yet it filled the room with strength. Tomas stood frozen, the sack still clutched in his hand. He could not believe what he had just heard. You can speak?" Tomas asked slowly. His voice cracked with both fear and wonder. The woman nodded. Her eyes glimmered in the dim light, patterns on her skin glowing faintly as if responding to her heartbeat. She spoke again, carefully forming each word, as if she was not used to the human tongue. "Yes. I speak little, your words. But I try. Thank you." Tomas swallowed hard. He had expected silence, or maybe strange sounds he could not understand. Instead, her words carried warmth, and there was no anger in her tone. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice quieter now. She lowered her head slightly, as if the question reminded her of something far away. "Lyra," she said at last. The name lingered in the air. Tomas repeated it softly, almost afraid it might vanish if he said it too loudly. "Lyra." She watched him carefully, her bright eyes steady. "Your name?" she asked in return. "Tomas," he replied. There was a pause. The two stood in the small room, facing each other, neither knowing what to say next. Outside, the wind rattled the roof, carrying with it the faint noise of the distant bazaar. "You were there," Tomas finally said. "On the platform. Why?" Lyra's face grew serious. She did not answer at once. Her gaze drifted to the floor, and the glow on her skin dimmed. "I was taken," she said simply. "Men catch me. They sell me." Tomas frowned. He had seen traders sell machines, animals, even desperate workers. But never had he seen someone like her. "Taken from where?" he asked. Her eyes lifted to his, and for a moment Tomas felt as though he were staring into a sky full of stars. "Far," she said softly. "Beyond your sun. My world, broken. I escape. But they find me." Tomas's breath caught. He did not fully understand, yet he knew enough. She was not from his colony, not from his world, not even from the same stars. She was something greater, an alien standing inside his tiny shack. You're not human," he whispered. Lyra shook her head gently. "Not human. But I know your kind. Long time, we watch." Her words puzzled him. Watch? Why would someone like her, from so far away, care about humans? He wanted to ask more, but he saw the tiredness in her posture, the faint tremble of her hands. "You need rest," he said quickly. "Sit here." He pointed to the wooden bench by the wall. She obeyed, lowering herself gracefully despite the rope still around her wrists. Tomas noticed them and felt ashamed he had not untied them earlier. With clumsy fingers, he loosened the knots and pulled the ropes away. Her skin was marked with faint red lines where the ropes had rubbed against her, and he looked away, embarrassed at the thought of her suffering. "You are free now," he said firmly. "No one owns you." Her lips curved into the smallest smile. "Free," she repeated, as if testing the word. Then she looked at him deeply. You, by me. Why? Tomasz hesitated. He wanted to say he did it out of pity, or because the merchants mocked her, or even because he was curious. But none of those answers felt right. In truth, he had acted on something he could not explain, a pull in his chest that told him it was the right thing to do. I don't know, he admitted. It just felt important. For a long moment, Lyra studied him. Then she spoke softly, I knew. When you look, I feel different from others. Not see me as thing. You see, me. Tomasz felt his face grow warm. No one had ever spoken to him like that before. Most people saw him as poor, weak, unimportant. Yet here was someone unlike anyone else, telling him he had seen her as a person. He sat down across from her, his hands folded tightly. Questions swirled in his mind, too many to ask at once. Lyra, he said finally, what happens now? They might come looking for you. Those merchants. Or worse. Her expression darkened. Yes. They want me. Not safe. Tomasz's chest tightened. He had thought spending his last coin was risky enough, but now he realized he had stepped into something far bigger. Still, as he looked at her, he felt no regret. Instead, he felt a strange determination growing inside him. You can stay here, he said. It's not much, but no one comes near my shack. You'll be safe for now. Lyra tilted her head, her glowing patterns brightening faintly, as if showing approval. You help me. I help you, she said. Tomasz blinked. Help me? How? Her eyes seemed to shine brighter. I carry knowledge. Stars, maps, power. I share, if you trust. His heart thumped loudly. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. Knowledge of stars? Power? She was offering him something beyond his wildest dreams. Yet in that moment, Tomasz was not thinking of riches or glory. He was thinking of the voice that had said thank you, the calm eyes that looked at him as if he mattered. For the first time in his life, Tomasz felt that he was standing on the edge of something vast and unknown. And it had all begun with a single coin. Morning light crept through the cracks in Tomasz's shack, painting thin lines across the floor. He had barely slept. All night his thoughts had circled around the strange woman, Lyra, who now rested quietly on the bench. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faint glow on her skin, the starlight in her eyes, and he wondered what danger he had brought upon himself. He was not wrong to worry. By midday, whispers began to spread in the colony. Traders grumbled that someone had stolen their prize. Patrols marched the streets, asking questions. People who had seen Tomasz at the bazaar muttered his name, shaking their heads. Everyone knew the poor boy who spent his last coin. Inside the shack, Tomasz paced nervously. They will come, he muttered. They will come looking. Lyra sat calmly, watching him. Yes, she said. They hunt me. Not stop. Tomasz rubbed his face. Then we can't stay here. If they find you, they'll take you back. He paused, then added, or worse. Her glowing patterns flickered, dim for a moment, then bright again. You help me. I trust you. We go. Go where? Tomasz asked. His voice was louder than he meant. This colony has nothing. Beyond it is desert and rock. I have no ship, no weapons. I have nothing. Lyra's eyes softened. You have heart. That is more than many. The words struck him deeply, but there was no time to let them sink in. A sudden knock rattled the door. Tomasz, a harsh voice barked. Open up. Tomasz froze. His blood ran cold. Outside, boots scraped against the dirt. He heard more than one person. Lyra stood in one smooth motion. We must leave now. The knock came again, harder this time. "We know she's in there. Open or we break the door." Tomas's breath raced. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her toward the back. The shack had no real back door, but there was a loose panel in the wall that opened to the narrow alley behind. He pushed it aside, and the two slipped out just as the front door crashed open. Shouts filled the shack. Men cursed, their heavy steps pounding inside. But Tomas and Lyra were already running down the alley, their feet kicking up dust. "Faster," Lyra urged, though her voice was calm, steady. She moved with surprising grace, her long strides carrying her easily. Tomas struggled to keep up, but he pushed himself harder than ever before. They darted between houses, slipped behind water barrels, and wove through the maze of narrow streets. Behind them, the angry voices grew louder. "They went this way. Don't let them escape." Tomas's chest burned, but he did not stop. He led Lyra toward the old mining tunnels at the edge of the settlement. The tunnels had been abandoned years ago when the colony's mines ran dry. No one went there anymore, which made it the perfect place to hide. By the time they reached the rocky entrance, Tomas's legs trembled. He bent over, gasping for breath. Lyra, however, stood tall, her eyes scanning the shadows. "They follow," she said softly. Tomas listened. Faint echoes of pursuit drifted on the wind. He clenched his fists. "Then we go inside." The tunnels were cold and dark. Stale air clung to the walls, and loose stones crunched under their feet. Tomas had been inside once before as a child, but he had never gone far. Now, with Lyra beside him, he felt both fear and strange courage. "Do you know where this leads?" she asked. "Not really," Tomas admitted. "But it's better than being caught." They pressed deeper into the tunnel, their footsteps echoing softly. The light from the entrance faded until only faint glimmers from Lyra's glowing skin lit their path. It was not bright, but it was enough. Tomas could not help but glance at her as they walked. The patterns on her arms and face shifted gently, like waves of light. She looked otherworldly, yet there was calmness in her movements that steadied him. "They will search long," she said after a while. "But we are ahead. Safe for now." Tomas leaned against the wall, trying to catch his breath again. "I don't understand. Why are they so desperate to have you? You're not just different. You're important, aren't you?" Lyra looked at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "I carry knowledge," she said. "Maps of stars. Secrets of power. If they take me, they control it. Dangerous." Tomas felt a chill run down his spine. He had thought she was just strange, maybe valuable, but this was bigger. "And you trust me with this? A poor boy with nothing." Her voice was firm. "Yes. You see me as I am. That matters more than wealth." For a long moment, silence filled the tunnel. Tomas felt the weight of her words, heavier than any secret he had ever carried. He was just a boy with patched clothes and an empty stomach, yet she believed in him. Suddenly, a shout echoed from the tunnel entrance. The hunters had found their trail. Their voices bounced through the stone, closer than Tomas wanted. "They're in here." Tomas's pulse leapt. He grabbed Lyra's hand again. "Come on." They ran deeper, the tunnel twisting and sloping downward. The darkness grew thicker, but Lyra's faint light guided them. Behind, the clatter of boots and the echo of angry voices chased them like shadows. At last, the tunnel widened into a large cavern. Stalactites hung from the ceiling, and pools of still water reflected faint light. The air was cold and damp. Tomas stopped, breathing hard. "We can hide here," he whispered. Lyra placed a hand on the cavern wall, closing her eyes. The patterns on her skin brightened. "This place, old," she murmured. "There is something here." Before Tomas could ask, the sound of pursuit grew louder. They were out of time. Yet even as fear gripped him, Tomas felt something stir inside. He had always been the poor boy no one noticed. But now, with Lyra at his side, he was running not just from danger, but towards something greater, something he could not yet name. And he would not let her be taken again. The cavern was quiet except for the soft drip of water falling from the rocks above. Tomas leaned against the wall, chest rising and falling as he caught his breath. He could still hear the faint echoes of the hunter's boots somewhere behind, but for now, there was distance between them. Lyra stood in the center of the cavern, her glowing skin faintly lighting the space. Her patterns pulsed in slow waves, and her eyes seemed to study the walls as if they carried meaning Tomas could not see. "This place," she whispered, "it remembers." Tomas frowned, confused. "It's just stone. Old tunnels. Nothing here." She shook her head gently. "Not only stone. Long ago, your people dig. They find nothing of value, so they leave. But deep places hide memory. I feel it." Tomas stepped closer, curiosity tugging at him. "Memory? What do you mean?" She placed her hand against the rough wall. The patterns on her skin brightened, and suddenly the cavern changed. Lines of light spread across the stone, glowing shapes appearing where before there was only darkness. Tomas gasped as he saw symbols, stars, and strange maps unfold before his eyes, painted in living light. "What is this?" he whispered, wide-eyed. Lyra's voice was calm but strong. "It is a map. My people left traces across many worlds, hidden in places where only few could find. This shows paths between stars, safe roads through space storms, and gates that can carry ships far beyond what humans now know." Tomas stared at the glowing map. He had grown up thinking the colony was the edge of everything. He knew of ships that came sometimes from other settlements, but he had never imagined there were secrets of travel beyond the stars themselves. "Why is it here?" he asked, his voice filled with wonder. "Because long ago, we watched your kind," Lyra explained. "We believed humans had something rare. Hope. Spirit. Fire inside that does not die. We thought one day, you would reach the stars. So we left knowledge hidden, waiting." Her words made Tomas's chest tighten. No one had ever spoken of humans like that. On his colony, people thought of themselves as poor, forgotten, left behind by the larger worlds. Yet here was someone from far away, telling him that humanity mattered. "Then why are you hunted?" he asked carefully. Lyra's face grew sad. "Because not all want humans to rise. Some fear what you may become. If I give this map to the wrong hands, it will be used for control, not freedom. That is why they chase me. That is why they want me silent." Tomas felt a chill. He had thought the traders were just greedy, but now he realized the danger was larger. This was not only about Lyra. It was about humanity's future. He turned back to the map, staring at the glowing stars on the wall. "And you trust me with this?" Lyra stepped closer. Her eyes held his without wavering. "I do. When you looked at me, you saw a person, not a thing. That is why I choose you. You may be poor, but your heart is rich." Tomas felt his face grow warm. He lowered his eyes, unsure how to respond. No one had ever called him rich in any way. Yet her words gave him strength, a strange feeling that he could carry something larger than himself. From deeper in the tunnels, the sound of voices echoed again. The hunters were still searching. Time was short. "We can't stay," Tomas said quickly. "They'll find us." Lyra nodded, but her hand remained on the glowing wall. The symbols shimmered, then faded slowly back into darkness. Only the memory of the starlight remained in Tomas's mind. She turned to him. "The map is inside me. I carry it. Even if stone fades, it lives in me. Tomasz swallowed hard. He knew then why she was so valuable to those who hunted her. She was not just a woman from another world. She was a living key to the stars. They moved again, deeper into the cavern. The air grew colder, the stone walls damp with hidden streams. Tomasz's legs ached, but he pressed on. Each step carried him further from the life he had known, closer to something vast. "Lyra," he said as they walked, his voice low, "why do you believe so much in humans? We are small. Weak. My colony can barely feed itself. What makes us special?" She was silent for a moment before answering. "Because you dream. Even when all is lost, humans dream. You build fire in darkness. You rise after falling. That spirit is rare in the stars." Her words stayed with him, echoing louder than the hunters behind them. Tomasz had always thought of himself as nothing more than a poor boy with patched clothes and empty pockets. Yet she spoke as if he carried something greater inside. At last, they reached another cavern, smaller than the first. It opened to a crack in the rock where faint daylight streamed in. Through it, Tomasz could see the desert stretching wide, the horizon glowing red under the setting sun. "We can leave here," he said. "Slip out into the desert. They won't see us if we move at night." Lyra nodded, stepping toward the light. "Yes. But danger grows. They will not stop. Others will come." Tomasz clenched his fists. Fear pressed at his chest, but another feeling rose with it: resolve. He had chosen this path the moment he spent his only coin. Now he could not turn back. "We'll keep moving," he said. "As long as it takes. I won't let them take you." Lyra's eyes met his, and the patterns on her skin glowed brighter for a moment, as if answering his promise. "Then you walk the path of stars with me," she said softly. Tomasz looked out at the vast desert, the sky darkening above with the first hints of night. For the first time in his life, he felt that his steps mattered. He was no longer just a poor boy in a forgotten colony. He was holding a secret that could shape the future of humanity. And the journey had only begun. The desert night stretched wide and endless. Stars shone above, clear and bright, scattered across the dark sky like diamonds on black cloth. Tomasz and Lyra walked quietly, their footsteps soft on the sand. The air was cool, and the wind carried only the whisper of grains shifting across the dunes. For a while, silence was their shield. The colony lights faded behind them, and Tomasz began to hope they had escaped. But deep inside, he knew it was not over. Lyra moved with calm steps, her eyes scanning the horizon. "They will not give up," she said softly. Tomasz nodded. "I know. But maybe we can stay ahead of them." She looked at him with steady eyes. "They are not only men. Others come. Stronger." Her words sank heavy into his chest. He wanted to ask what she meant, but before he could speak, a sudden sound broke the quiet. Far behind, in the direction of the colony, engines roared. The low hum grew louder, joined by sharp beams of light sweeping across the dunes. "They have machines," Tomasz whispered. Lyra's patterns flickered with unease. "Hunters. Paid to find me." Fear clawed at Tomasz, but he forced his legs to move faster. "We need cover," he said quickly. The desert stretched bare, but not far ahead rose a ridge of stone where the sand met rocky hills. They pushed toward it, their steps quickening as the lights behind grew closer. Tomasz's lungs burned, but he refused to stop. At last, they reached the rocks and slipped into the shadows of a narrow path. The engines roared closer, dust rising into the sky. Tomasz pressed his back against the stone, pulling Lyra with him. Together, they waited as the hunter's machines swept across the sand below. From the darkness, Tomasz peeked out. Sleek hovercrafts glided across the desert, carrying men armed with rifles and glowing visors that scanned the night. Their voices carried through the wind. "She's out here," One shouted. Find her before dawn. Tomas's stomach knotted. These were not the laughing merchants from the bazaar. These were soldiers, trained and dangerous. If they found Lyra, they would take her or worse. Lyra touched his shoulder gently. We cannot fight them. But we can move unseen. Tomas nodded, though his heart pounded. He led her deeper into the rocky path, away from the searchlights. The ground was rough, scattered with stones that cut his feet, but he pushed forward. Every sound of the hunters behind reminded him what was at stake. As they climbed higher into the hills, the noise of the machines faded slightly. Tomas finally stopped to catch his breath. His legs shook, and sweat dripped down his face despite the cool night air. We can't keep running like this, he said. They'll find us sooner or later. Lyra's eyes glowed softly in the darkness. There is a way. I can show you something. What is it? Tomas asked. She looked around, then guided him to a sheltered alcove between two large rocks. There, she knelt and pressed her hands against the ground. Her skin brightened, and the faint patterns spread outward, as if she were sending her light into the earth itself. For a moment, Tomas saw nothing. Then the rocks around them began to shift, glowing lines appearing on their surfaces like hidden symbols waking from sleep. Tomas's mouth fell open. How are you doing this? My people leave traces, Lyra explained. Old tech, hidden in many worlds. With it, I can protect us, for a time. The glowing lines pulsed, then faded, leaving only stone again. But the air felt different, heavy with something unseen. What did you do? Tomas asked carefully. Veil, she said simply. They cannot see us if we stay quiet. As if to test her words, the hum of engines returned, closer this time. Tomas held his breath as a hovercraft swept over the ridge, its lights shining directly toward their hiding place. The beams passed over without pause, moving on as if nothing were there. Tomas exhaled in disbelief. It worked. Lyra nodded, though her face showed strain. It will not last long. We must move when day comes. Tomas sat beside her, the fear in his chest slowly giving way to something else: admiration. She was not only mysterious but also strong, carrying knowledge beyond anything he had ever dreamed. Yet even with her power, she trusted him. That thought gave him strength. They rested in silence until the first light of dawn touched the horizon. Then, as the engines of the hunters grew faint in the distance, Tomas stood and helped Lyra to her feet. Where now? He asked. She pointed toward the mountains beyond the desert. There. Safer paths. But long journey. Tomas squared his shoulders. His body ached, and his mind was tired, but his resolve was firm. Then we'll make it. As they set off once more, the rising sun painted the desert gold. Behind them, the hunters searched endlessly, their machines scouring the sand. The chase was far from over. But Tomas no longer felt like the poor boy who had once walked the bazaar with a single coin in his pocket. With each step beside Lyra, he felt himself changing. He was carrying more than his own life now. He was carrying a secret of the stars, a bond stronger than fear. And though the hunt had only grown fiercer, Tomas knew one thing for certain: he would not let her fall into their hands. The mountains rose ahead like silent giants, their peaks painted red by the fading sun. Tomas and Lyra had walked all day through sand and stone, climbing higher into paths where the air grew thin and cold. Their steps were slow, but neither stopped. Behind them, the hunters still surged, their machines cutting across the desert like predators chasing prey. By nightfall, the two found a narrow cave in the cliffs. The entrance was hidden by rocks, and inside, it was dry and quiet. Tomas dropped onto the ground, his legs aching from the climb. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. We can rest here, he said. Lyra nodded and sat across from him. Her glowing patterns were faint, flickering softly in the darkness. She seemed tired too, though her eyes remained watchful. "They are close," she whispered. Tomas frowned. "How do you know?" She placed her hand on the stone floor. "I feel the ground. Their machines shake the earth." "Not far." Tomas's stomach tightened. He had hoped the climb would give them safety, but it seemed the hunters would not stop. He stared at his hands, rough and dirty, and felt a heavy weight in his chest. "Lyra," he said quietly, "maybe I should give you up. If I hand you to them, they might let me go. I'm just one boy. They don't care about me." Her eyes lifted, steady and calm. "Is that what you want?" Tomas shook his head quickly. "No. But I don't know how to fight them. They have ships, weapons, everything. I have nothing." Lyra leaned forward. Her voice was soft but firm. "You have more than you think. You have choice. That is the greatest power." Tomas blinked. "Choice?" She nodded. "Yes. You choose if I am taken. You choose if they control what I carry. One choice can change the path of many." Her words struck him deeply. He thought of the bazaar, of the moment he had given his only coin. That choice had brought him here. It had led him into danger, yes, but it had also given him something greater, a purpose he had never felt before. He looked at her glowing patterns, faint but beautiful in the dark. She trusted him, even when he doubted himself. "What happens if they catch you?" he asked. Her voice grew heavy. "They will silence me. They will take the map I carry and use it to rule. Humans will remain small, broken, forgotten. The stars will be locked away from you." Tomas clenched his fists. The thought filled him with anger, not at her, but at the idea of losing something so important. He had grown up believing humans were nothing more than survivors in dust and hunger. Now he knew humanity had a place among the stars. He could not let that be stolen. Suddenly, a sharp sound echoed outside the cave. The hum of engines, closer than ever. Lights flashed against the rocks. The hunters had found them. "They are here," Lyra whispered. Tomas jumped to his feet, his heart racing. He grabbed Lyra's hand. "Come on. We can't stay." They ran through the back of the cave, finding a narrow passage that sloped upward. Stones shifted under their feet, but they kept climbing. Behind them, voices shouted, and heavy boots struck the ground. At the top of the passage, the cave opened to a ledge overlooking the valley. Below, the hunters gathered, their machines glowing in the night. The leader raised a hand, shouting up toward them. "Boy! Give her to us, and you live. She is not yours. Hand her over." Tomas's chest pounded. He looked down at the army below, then at Lyra beside him. Her eyes were calm, but he saw the faint sadness there, as if she expected him to let go. This was the moment. His choice. He took a deep breath and shouted down, his voice breaking the silence of the cliffs. "No. She's not yours. She's not a thing to sell. She's not a prize to keep. She's free." The hunters roared in anger. Engines flared, and weapons were raised. "Then you die with her," the leader shouted. Lyra stepped forward, placing her hand on the stone of the ledge. Her patterns brightened, shining brighter than ever before. Tomas shielded his eyes as the ground shook. Beneath them, the rock split, and a hidden structure began to awaken. From the earth rose a tall pillar of metal covered in symbols, glowing like the map Tomas had seen in the cavern before. The hunters froze, their machines halting. The pillar hummed with power, sending waves of light into the sky. "What is this?" Tomas gasped. "A beacon," Lyra answered. "Your world holds many. My people left them sleeping. But with your choice, you awaken it." The hunters panicked. Their leader shouted for retreat, but it was too late. The beacon sent a beam of light shooting into the stars, cutting through the night sky like a blade of fire. The ground trembled, and the air hummed with energy. Tomas stared in awe. His choice had called something greater than himself, something far beyond the colony. The hunters fled, their machines scattering into the desert. None dared stay near the beacon. When the ground grew still, Tomas turned to Lyra. She looked at him with quiet pride. "You see now," she said softly. "Your choice matters. Not only for you, but for all of your kind. The stars have heard you." Tomas stood silent, staring up at the beam of light stretching into the heavens. For the first time, he believed her words. Humans were not small. They were not forgotten. They were something more. And he had chosen to prove it. The beam of light from the beacon stretched high into the night sky, so bright that even the distant towns could see it. People came out of their homes, pointing upward in wonder, asking each other what it meant. For Tomas, standing on the rocky ledge with Lyra, it felt like the whole world had changed in a single moment. The hunters were gone, their machines retreating into the desert. The cliff was quiet again, except for the low hum of the beacon. Tomas looked at it, then at Lyra. She stood tall, her glowing patterns moving like waves across her skin. For the first time, she did not look like a stranger to him. She looked like hope. "What happens now?" Tomas asked. Lyra touched the beacon with her hand, and it answered with a soft pulse of light. "The signal has gone to the stars. My people will know this world is awake. They will come." Tomas felt his chest tighten. "Will they take you away?" Her eyes softened. "Perhaps. But I am not the important one here. You are. You chose to stand when others would kneel. That choice cannot be taken away." He looked down at his dirty hands, scarred from climbing, cut from stone. He had never thought of himself as important. He had been only a poor boy, living day by day, with no future except dust. Yet here he was, standing beside a being from another world, guarding a beacon that could change the fate of all humans. "Why me?" he whispered. Lyra smiled gently. "Because you gave when you had nothing. You saw more than a sack over a head. You saw me. That is why." Tomas did not know what to say. He only knew her words were true. As the night stretched on, the beacon's light grew softer, though it still reached the stars. Tomas and Lyra rested near the cave, waiting. Hours passed, and then the sky changed. A faint glow appeared among the stars, moving faster than anything he had ever seen. Lyra stood quickly. Her patterns brightened. "They are coming." Tomas followed her gaze. In the darkness, several lights drew near, descending through the sky like falling stars. His mouth fell open as the shapes grew clearer, ships, larger than anything he had imagined, smooth and bright, like silver birds. They moved silently, yet the air shook with their arrival. The ships slowed above the valley and hovered, their presence filling the night. From the largest one, a beam of soft light stretched down to the ground near the beacon. Figures stepped out, tall and graceful, with the same glowing patterns as Lyra. Tomas felt his heart race. These were her people. Lyra turned to him. "Come with me." He hesitated. "Will they accept me?" Her hand touched his arm gently. "You are the reason they are here. They will see that." Together, they walked down the path, the glow of the beacon guiding their steps. When they reached the valley, the tall figures surrounded them. Their eyes glowed faintly, but their faces were calm, almost kind. One of them, taller than the rest, stepped forward. He looked at Lyra first. "You have done well." His voice was deep and smooth. Then his eyes moved to Tomas. "And this is the human who chose." Tomas swallowed hard. "I only did what I thought was right." The tall figure studied him for a moment. Then, To Tomas's surprise, he bowed his head slightly. "That is why you are worthy." The others murmured softly, their glowing patterns shifting like light on water. Lyra spoke then. "He saved me when he had nothing to give. He stood when the hunters came. Without him, the beacon would still sleep." The tall figure nodded. "Then let it be written. The humans are not forgotten." Their voices heard. Tomas felt warmth spread through his chest. For the first time, he was not just a poor boy in a forgotten town. He was part of something greater. The tall figure raised his hand, and one of the ships lowered closer. A ramp opened, glowing softly. Lyra looked at Tomas. "You may stay," she said gently. "Or you may come. The choice is yours." Tomas looked back at the valley, at the desert beyond. He thought of the small market, the dusty streets, the faces of people who had no hope. Then he looked at Lyra, standing before him with trust in her eyes. He took a deep breath. "If I go, can I help my people? Can I make life better for them?" The tall figure answered. "Yes. With us, you will learn. You will carry knowledge back. You will guide them." Tomas looked at Lyra again. She had been a stranger, hidden under a sack, bought for a single coin. But she had become the one who opened his eyes, the one who showed him the stars. "I will go," he said firmly. Lyra's face softened with relief. Together, they stepped onto the ramp. The ship's light wrapped around them, warm and bright. As they rose into the sky, Tomas looked down one last time at the valley, the beacon still glowing like a torch in the night. He whispered to himself, "They will not be forgotten." The ship carried them upward, past the clouds, into the sea of stars. For Tomas, the boy who once had nothing, it was not the end. It was the beginning. Because he had chosen. And because she was the one he chose.